She told me not to worry. Sent that message like she was tossing a bone to a distracted dog. It's just a harmless getaway. Relax. Funny thing about people who say relax. It's never when you're relaxed. It's when they're nervous and trying to cover it with a smile. I was sitting on the back porch, sun dipping behind the oaks, brushing grit out of the grooves of my old Seiko dive watch. She'd given it to me for our 10th anniversary. Said she liked how it looked like it could survive a war. It had, and so had I. So when her message pinged through, I didn't get angry. I didn't call. I didn't ask who she was with, or why she suddenly didn't mention which girls she was traveling with, or why she was now conveniently using her maiden name to book flights. I just stared at it. The way it was worded, short, polished, falsely casual. I'd seen reports written like that in the Navy. Briefs meant to skim over deeper truths. The kind you write when you hope no one asks follow-ups. There was no destination listed. No hotel name. Not even the typical, say hi to Max she usually dropped in when she left town. And that's when I knew. She wanted to see if I'd challenge it. If I'd protest. If I'd play the insecure husband card so she could laugh it off. Tell me I was being paranoid or boring. But I didn't play. I typed exactly 7 words. Hope you and he enjoy the sea. And then I put the phone down. Didn't wait for the bubble to say she was typing. Didn't need to. I already knew the game she was playing. I stood up, walked into the garage, and pulled the black case from under the workbench. Most men would expect a gun inside. Not this one. This was a different kind of weapon. A tool I trusted more than any pistol. A personal ledger, worn leather, steel lock. Inside, 30 years of cross-referenced financial notes, scanned receipts, passwords, security keys. She always joked about how obsessed I was with keeping a manual paper brain. Now it was about to become a war map. There's a type of silence that doesn't hum. It clicks. You can feel it tightening. That's the sound I heard in my skull. I flipped open to the section labeled Joint Investments, found the entry for our supposed retirement property, and cross-referenced the wire transfer date, March 9th. Amount, $218,400. Memo, Beachfront Trust, Future Home. Funny, I didn't remember approving that memo. If you've ever sat in that exact kind of silence, knowing something's wrong but not having the proof yet, do me a favor, tap that subscribe button. Over 97% of people listen and don't, and it genuinely helps the team share these stories with those who need to hear them. Back to the ledger. The wire had gone to a trust, not a name. CM Holdings. I'd never seen that abbreviation before in our records. Not in the last 10 years. And that was odd, because Melanie hated trusts. She said they were for the rich who don't want to pay taxes. So why suggest one now? My gut twisted, not with rage, but with clarity. Like a puzzle piece locking into place. This wasn't spontaneous. She'd been planning this. The girls' trip was a smokescreen. The text? A soft launch of a boundary push. She wanted to test how asleep I was. I closed the ledger, locked it again, and slid it into the false bottom drawer of the gun safe. Then I went back to the kitchen and made a sandwich. Roast beef, mustard, sourdough, precisely cut. Because I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to beg. She thought I was just a tired man with a garage full of tools and stories. But what she forgot, what they always forget, is that when a man's been through storms, he doesn't fear the wind anymore. He charts it, uses it, and I just caught the first gust. The second I saw CM Holdings in the wire memo, I knew it wasn't random. Melanie didn't do acronyms. She was the type to write out television remote controller on the grocery list instead of just batteries. She liked things spelled out, no room for misinterpretation, unless she was the one doing the misinterpreting. So I dug. Opened the email chain from 3 months ago. Subject line, finally thinking about us, Redheart. That was her pitch. She said we needed to be smart and proactive about retirement. Said this beach property was undervalued and a rare find. All her language was borrowed from realtors and clickbait blogs. Not once did she name the location. No Zillow link. No listing sheet. What I did find was a PDF with a forwarding request to move $218,400 from our joint investment account into the trust. The form looked legit, headers, tax ID, routing numbers, but the owner of the trust? Colin J. Martin. Now that name meant nothing to me. Not yet. But I wasn't new to this game. You don't run naval logistics for 2 decades without smelling fuel under the waterline. I opened a notepad and jotted it down. Colin J. Martin. Born 1975. California Trust Registry. I'd look him up later. First, I needed something human. Something she hadn't redacted. Melanie was meticulous about finances, but careless about memory. So I opened Facebook. Her profile was still active, set to friends only, but we were still listed as married. I clicked through her photos, not the ones she posted recently, but the old ones. The ones people forget they even uploaded. Graduation party in 2014. She's in the foreground, smiling at someone off camera. Behind her, a man with thick brown hair and a floral shirt is holding a cocktail and leaning in too close. Not arm around the waist close. Closer. Like the kind of close you get when you're already comfortable being private in public. Click. The photo's caption read, "Back when parties were wild. Colin M. Hilarious as always." Hilarious, right? I bet. Next photo, same event. This time he's next to her. Red plastic cup, her hand on his shoulder. Not romantic. Not obvious. But too familiar for a man who never once came up in 27 years of conversation. Who the hell was Colin M.? And why was she wiring our money to his trust? I clicked on his tagged profile. Locked. But the preview said enough. Profile pic of him surfing. Banner of a beach. Location. Living life one tide at a time. He looked like someone who aged into being laid back, not someone who started that way. Polished white teeth. Fitted tee. Fake humility. I smiled, but not the kind with warmth. It was the smile I used to make in logistics meetings when someone thought they were hiding a shipment. The "you forgot I inventory everything" smile. So I opened a browser tab and ran a reverse search through public trust databases. Took 5 minutes. There he was. Colin J. Martin, registered trustee, Pacific Gulf Investment Trust. Address. Listed in Coronado. A city Melanie once said was too touristy for her taste. She'd been there last year on a wellness retreat. Sure she had. I leaned back in my chair and folded my hands. Melanie wasn't just planning a vacation. She was plotting an extraction. A quiet, slow-motion desertion disguised as forward planning. And she thought hiding it behind retirement made it noble. I clicked to our bank's online portal. Downloaded every transaction Melanie had made in the last 6 months. Filtered by out-of-state charges. Every month, for the past 4 months, 2 transactions at a place called Sandpine Resort. Same beachside zip code. One booked in her name, the others under M. Jameson. Her maiden name. I didn't ask questions. Questions are for people who want excuses. I wanted patterns. And the pattern was loud now. As loud as a sonar ping in a steel hull. The beachfront property wasn't for us. It was her next chapter with Colin. The trust wasn't to protect our assets. It was to protect his. And I just traced the whole pipeline. All it took was one careless acronym, one forgotten party photo, and one man with time, discipline, and a ledger built on habit. Melanie thought she was flying under radar. But she forgot I used to be the radar. And I was just starting to warm up. I called Janine first because she was the easiest to rattle. Not because she was careless, Janine was sharp, always had been. But because she was allergic to being dragged into messes that weren't hers. She was the type who'd throw you under the bus, then call you later to apologize with wine. Melanie always said Janine had loose lips in tight spaces. That was all I needed. She picked up on the 3rd ring, casual and chipper. Mark. Wow. Haven't heard your voice since the anniversary dinner. What's up? I didn't bother with pleasantries. Mel said she's with you on that beach getaway. Pause. Too short to be shock. Too long to be confirmation. Trip? What trip? My silence was its own kind of reply. Then she continued, voice shifting just slightly. Guilt curling at the edges. Oh, I haven't seen Mel since, gosh, early spring? Maybe March? I think we talked about some spa thing, but I never committed. You know how she is with plans. Yeah. I knew. I thanked her, hung up and called Lydia next. Another one of Melanie's college-era crew. This time I let her talk more. She was better at lying, but worse at covering tracks. Girls' trip? I think that got scrapped, didn't it? I remember Mel floating the idea. She wanted to do something coastal. But Janine said she couldn't swing the time off. And I was dealing with my mom's surgery, so 2 calls. Same story. Not just similar, identical in structure, like it had been shared in a group chat with talking points. I didn't call a third. No need. She wasn't with the girls. She never planned to be. The trip was a fiction wrapped in nostalgia. Old college friends no one would question. It gave the illusion of safety. of familiarity. And if I hadn't checked? I opened our banking app again, logged into the joint card we still technically shared, though I hadn't used it in months. Melanie liked to keep expenses visible, said it helped her stay accountable. The hypocrisy made me laugh. Not loudly, just a dry, empty chuckle that died in my throat. There it was 3 days ago, $1,428.92 at the Rivage Shoreline Hotel, located right on the coast, 5 hours south. A luxury boutique spot, wine tastings, private cabanas, couples packages. And the reservation? Not under Melanie Carlson but Melanie Jameson. Her maiden name, the one she hadn't used since 1998. The one she only used now for spa memberships and flash sale clothing sites. I opened the hotel website and simulated a booking, just out of curiosity. Mid-October getaway, Ocean View Suite, 2 guests, 3 nights. The total? Exactly what she charged. 2 guests. Not 3. Not 1. 2. My eyes locked on the reservation notes section in the confirmation sample. It was blank, but on her receipt, there was one detail. Balcony view preferred. So she wanted the view. She wanted the sun. And she wanted someone next to her. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen. Not at the numbers. Not at the charges. At the implications. She had built a whole story. Down to the fake chatter with Janine, the made-up texts about packing chaos. The detail about how Lydia needs this so bad. She's been losing it. She invented their stress so I'd excuse her escape. That's what twisted the knife deeper. Not just the betrayal but the performance of it. The fact she crafted it like a screenplay, cast the roles, scripted the lines, and assumed the audience, me, would never break the fourth wall. I reached into the drawer beside me and pulled out the flash drive I kept for emergencies. Plugged it in. Started downloading screenshots, statements, confirmation receipts, her social media post from the night she left with the caption, "Can't wait to unplug with the girls. Wine, waves, no husbands." No husbands indeed. Each click felt surgical. I wasn't furious. I wasn't pacing or shouting. I'd done that version of myself in my 40s. The man who got into shouting matches and then apologized over burned dinners and forced smiles. That man was dead. Or maybe retired. Now I was just logging data. Quietly, carefully, like I used to in port when reviewing supply logs before deployment. Look for discrepancies. Flag anomalies. Build the report. Melanie thought she was creating memories. I was building a case. And I wasn't the only one who'd be reading it. I hadn't spoken to Don Avery in 9 years. Not since that mess at the Annapolis logistics subcontractor. Back then, he'd uncovered an offshore slush fund buried under 6 layers of shell companies and a fake Lithuanian charity. Quiet guy. Didn't waste words. The kind of man who hands you a folder and says, "Here's the problem," instead of some Netflix-length monologue. So when I called him and said, "Need a file on someone named Colin Martin, financial guy, might be tied to a trust CM Holdings," he didn't ask why. He just said, "Give me 4 hours." I gave him 2. While he worked, I made myself useful. Pulled up every bank account Melanie had ever accessed. I still had a traceable login for the Fidelity rollover we never fully closed after my early retirement. We'd put some of my Navy bonus into that account. Just parked it there, planning to use it later for renovations or emergencies. Turns out, she thought he was the emergency. 3 months ago, a transfer memo appeared. $14,000 moved from that rollover into an investment preparation pool. The account it landed in was partially redacted, but the originating signature was Melanie's. The note, "Future property escrow," except that account was never set up for withdrawal. She'd had to call someone directly to move it. Someone like Colin Martin. 2 hours later, Don's file landed in my inbox. 7 pages. Precise. Annotated. Tidy as hell. Colin J. Martin. Age, 49. Financial consultant. Works freelance under Martin Capital Guidance. Based out of Temecula. Formerly with a mid-tier investment firm that went under after the 2008 fallout. Divorced. 2 kids from his first marriage. Estranged. No criminal record, but a bankruptcy filing in 2012 and a quietly settled lawsuit from a former client who claimed he'd funneled funds into unregistered ventures. And the kicker? Known to frequent Rivage Shoreline Hotel. Often books extended stays solo. Pattern suggests a rotating guest list. Multiple aliases used for co-reservations, mostly women. One repeat pattern, M. Jameson. I stared at that name. My wife's maiden name. The one she now used to cheat like a teenager who thinks a fake ID still works. Don had attached a screen grab public property records from the same beachfront zip code. CM Holdings was listed as the partial owner on a duplex condo Unit 3B. No mortgage. Paid in full. Unit 3B. The same room Melanie had tagged in a geotagged photo last month. The one with a vague caption. Could live here forever. Yeah. I bet you could. But the real gut punch was on page 6. A transfer authorization memo. One of my old accounts. The one tied to the dormant Navy pension I never touched because it had an absurd 10-year hold on withdrawals. Melanie had never even asked me about it. She just pulled the routing info from our files. And Colin? He was listed as the investment liaison. Liaison. That word always makes me laugh. It's what liars use when they want their affairs to sound like diplomacy. I sat in silence, one hand over my mouth, the other flat on the desk, pressing the folder like I could choke it into telling me more. She didn't just lie about a trip. She didn't just fabricate an escape. She took pieces of my life, documents I'd secured, names I'd trusted, benefits I'd earned, and weaponized them into her next act. She used my past to buy her future, with a man who couldn't hold down a job long enough to earn one himself. And it wasn't even rage I felt. Not the old, blood-rushing-to-your-head kind of rage. That would have been a gift. No, this was colder. Like someone reached into my chest and rewired the wiring to silent mode. I stood, walked to the back door, and looked out over the garden I'd planted 2 springs ago for her. Peonies, lavender. The damn birdbath she'd insisted would make the yard feel like a poem. I used to trim the hedges on Saturdays while she read by the window, sipping lemon water like a queen. I remember thinking, this is peace. This is all I need. Turns out she needed more. Or maybe just different. Either way, I wasn't going to confront her yet. Because people like Melanie, they need to walk themselves into the fire. If you drag them, they scream and squirm and act like you're the monster. But if you let them keep marching, oblivious, into the fuel-soaked room, they light the match for you. And Colin? He was going to learn that trust is not something you buy with charm and Chardonnay. It's something you lose once, forever. I waited until the afternoon, just enough time for her to believe the storm had passed, that I'd accepted her weak little fiction of a harmless getaway. Then I sent the bait. Hope the weather's good. Heard it's gorgeous this time of year. No emojis. No punctuation fluff. Just polite distance. She replied 15 minutes later, and if I didn't know better, I'd almost believe it. A selfie. She's on a hotel balcony, hair done, makeup light. She's holding a mimosa, leaning just enough into the sun to look spontaneous. The sea behind her, that rivet shoreline. A postcard come to life. But she framed it too perfectly. Melanie never takes one photo. She takes 20, discards 19. Crops, filters, adjusts. So I downloaded the image and zoomed in. Not on her face. Not on the drink. On the reflection in the sliding door behind her. There it was. A man's silhouette. Shirtless, angled slightly away, hand outstretched, probably holding a second glass. She either didn't see it, or didn't care. I sat back, closed the photo, and opened a folder on my desktop labeled Contingency. It was time. No yelling, no confrontation, just data. Because when you're holding a live wire, the best thing to do is ground it. Safely, deliberately, I built 3 identical packages, digital and physical. Each one carefully structured with 3 parts. Financial statements, transfers to CM Holdings, account screenshots, the wire from my rollover pension. Visual evidence. Melanie's selfie with the silhouette enhanced, her geotagged Instagram story showing the same balcony view. A screenshot of Colin's condo registration and trust affiliations. A cover letter titled, Transparency Matters. 3 paragraphs. Calm. Measured. No accusations. Just facts. The final line read, I believe truth is owed to those closest to the fire, before it spreads. The first package was addressed to her mother, Diane. Diane never liked me, thought I was too quiet, too methodical. Once called me boring but stable, after too many glasses of wine at Thanksgiving. She was about to find out just how stable boring could be. The second package went to our attorney, Rebecca Langley. Family law mostly. Helped us draft the prenup back in 2003 when I inherited my uncle's land. Melanie never read the fine print. She trusted me back then. Rebecca would recognize the transfer documents immediately. She'd also noticed that none of the funds Melanie moved came from her earnings. All mine, including the ones she redirected into Colin's trust. The third package was the surgical strike. Colin's employer, Pacific Shore Financial Group. I tracked them down through LinkedIn, found the HR director, and addressed it formally. Inside was everything they needed to know. How one of their consultants was involved in asset commingling with a married woman, using a personal trust that had no official audit trail, potentially defrauding another person's retirement account. No threats, no lawsuit language, just an invitation to review the professional conduct of one Colin J. Martin in light of recent documentation, and a line suggesting additional scrutiny may be warranted from a compliance perspective. I signed each letter with my full name, no emotion, just black ink and clarity. The courier arrived at 5:15 p.m. 3 envelopes, stamped, one-day delivery. I watched from the window as the driver pulled away, the packages in his front seat like grenades with the pins already pulled. Melanie thought she was still in control. She probably posted that selfie, saw my message, and felt clever. Probably imagined me pacing in some jealous rage while she giggled over oysters and champagne. She had no idea that the floor beneath her was already giving out. Because this wasn't about catching her. It was about isolating her. Strategically, cutting the lines she'd tangled so carefully, letting everyone in her orbit see the rot she thought she'd hidden. By the time she landed back in our zip code, the narrative wouldn't be hers anymore. And Colin? He'd wake up in a few days to the sound of a compliance officer tapping on his glass door. No alarms, no shouting, just the quiet sound of a man taking everything back, one signature at a time. It was time to accelerate the tide. Melanie had booked 4 nights, checked in on a Thursday, planning to check out Monday. Colin, according to Don's report, had a client meeting late Sunday in LA. He'd be leaving Sunday morning, back to whatever portfolio smoke and mirror act he called a career. That meant Melanie had the weekend to live her fantasy, and then one night alone to reflect on it before she slithered back into our house, smiling like nothing had changed. I wasn't going to give her that luxury. Sunday morning would be the drop. But the setup had to start early, before Colin disappeared, before she had time to pivot, to spin, to rewrite. I created a new Gmail account under the name Eric Donovan. Booked a basic reservation at the Rivage Shoreline Hotel under the same name. Room never intended to be occupied. I just needed the system to acknowledge the name and allow communication with the front desk. Then, at 11:52 p.m., I sent them an email. Hi there. I'm Eric Donovan. I'm arranging a surprise for my wife, Melanie Jameson, staying in room 3B. Please call her room at 5:40 a.m. tomorrow and let her know her husband arranged a complimentary massage. Tell her to come to the front desk for details. The gift will be delivered at noon. Kindly confirm. The night manager replied at 12:09 a.m. Absolutely, Mr. Donovan. We'll make the call and ensure she receives her surprise. Perfect. At 7:15 a.m. that same morning, I scheduled a courier delivery. Neutral box. No return address. Just her name, her room number, and strict instructions. Must be signed for by recipient only. Inside was a single sealed envelope. Cream-colored paper. Elegant. Heavy enough to feel formal but not suspicious. The contents? One photo, printed in black and white. The silhouette of Colin in her balcony door, enhanced just enough to make out the curve of his arm and wine glass. One document copy of the wire transfer to CM Holdings. And one typed message, centered, in plain font. Enjoy the sea. I'll enjoy the clarity. I watched the tracking status update while sipping coffee, pacing just once around the kitchen, then stopping myself. No nerves, no second-guessing, just execution. At exactly 5:40 a.m., the call was placed. I imagined her still half asleep, probably irritated. She never liked surprises, hated mornings even more. Probably thought it was some spa voucher I'd clumsily tried to send as a peace offering. Maybe she rolled her eyes. Maybe she smiled and thought he's trying. But she got dressed, walked down the hallway, past couples heading to the gym, greeted the concierge with that fake polite tilt of her voice. Then they handed her the envelope. I wonder how long she stood there before opening it. Did she sit in the lobby's velvet chair with her legs crossed, sipping complimentary lemon water? Or did she take it upstairs, lock the door, and tear it open like a teenager hiding test results? I'd like to think she read the message first. That one line, cold, final, without a single wasted syllable. Enjoy the sea. I'll enjoy the clarity. That's the moment the trip died. That's the wave that cracked her fantasy wide open. Not a confrontation, not a phone call, just paper, print, and precision. A smart woman would have realized right then. This wasn't just about the lie. It was about the pattern of them. About how every time she leaned on my silence as proof of my weakness, she forgot what silence really was. It's not absence. It's aim. And right now, mine was locked in. There would be no last night of cocktails. No farewell kiss to Colin. No soft pillow to land on. She was about to spend her final night there alone. Fully aware of what I knew and worse, wondering who else now knew too. Because the second envelope, hers, was just the first. There were others. Already in motion. The concierge's hands were gentle, practiced, probably trained to hand people champagne flutes or anniversary cards, not quiet detonations in cream envelopes. Melanie took it like it was nothing, thanked them with a sleepy smile. She probably expected a couple's massage voucher. Maybe a handwritten note saying something meek like, "Sorry for being distant." Something pathetic she could interpret as me surrendering. She didn't open it in the lobby. She made it all the way back to the elevator. Keycard into room 3B. The curtain was half pulled. Colin had music on low. Some smug jazz fusion crap he always said was underrated. She didn't say a word. Just sat down on the corner of the bed and opened the envelope. The photo was first. Crisp print. 6x9. It wasn't the balcony silhouette. It was her and Colin side by side, walking hand in hand down that ridiculous palm tree-lined hotel path. I had Don pull it from the resort's public-facing social cam, the ones they use for marketing shots, except this one had a timestamp. Friday, 4:43 p.m. Clear as day. Her laughing. Him grinning. The cocky lean of a man who thinks no one's watching. But I was. Next was the transfer record, highlighted section, her signature, the trust's name, the account origin from my rollover fund. The one she told me she never touched because it felt like it was yours. And finally, the message. One sentence. Enjoy the sea. I'll enjoy the clarity. That was the moment she stopped being comfortable. I imagine the blood drained first. Not all at once, just enough to trigger that inner static. That ice in the gut. The one you get when you realize you missed something huge. She didn't cry. Melanie doesn't cry when she's cornered. She calculates. She tucked the photo back in the envelope, not sloppily. She always was tidy under pressure. Then she stood, turned around, and watched him. Colin, shirt off, phone to his ear, laughing with someone, probably about some useless real estate pitch. Oblivious. Or maybe not. Maybe he already knew. Maybe he'd gotten a call from his compliance officer. Or an email from HR asking if he could clarify a few irregularities. But Melanie just watched him. Long and quiet. Not the way a woman watches her lover. The way someone watches an avalanche start and realizes they're on the wrong side of the mountain. She didn't yell. Didn't accuse. She just sat back down and opened her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard like they weren't hers. She logged into the hotel Wi-Fi again. Clicked to the main page. Extend stay? No. Modify reservation? No. She opened a new browser tab. Airline booking site. She didn't check bags. Didn't wait for a price drop. Just searched one way. Nearest airport. Earliest available. Found a flight leaving in 6 hours. Booked it. Window seat. She didn't tell Colin. Just packed slowly, efficiently. Folded her things. Deleted her geotagged posts. Wiped the bathroom counter. Probably checked herself in the mirror one last time and wondered, did I really think I'd get away with this? She thought she could ride the wave, tan her guilt away under coastal light, sip cocktails and ease herself into a transition. From me to him. From our life to hers. But the message changed something. Because now she had no idea what I'd done next. Who else knew? How far it had gone. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't ranted. And that terrified her more than anything else could have. She checked out without speaking to the front desk. Left the key on the dresser. Didn't touch the minibar. Just walked out into the morning air. Suitcase in hand. Silence trailing her like smoke. The sea was still behind her. Beautiful. Calm. Cruel. But the clarity? That was all mine. She stepped off the plane expecting emptiness. Maybe a cold ride home. Maybe a silent kitchen. Maybe some cracked conversation with a man pretending to not be broken. That's what Melanie banked on. She'd do the apologetic routine, lean on sentiment, pull out an old joke or two. maybe even cry in that performative way she did when she wanted to reset the board without clearing the pieces. What she didn't expect was Diane, her mother, standing stiffly near baggage claim, arms crossed, no lipstick, no warmth. She didn't wave, just held out a padded envelope. Melanie blinked like she didn't understand it, then took it, didn't open it, couldn't really, not in front of her. The humiliation in her mother's eyes was already bad enough. Opening the package would have turned that glance into a weapon. So she followed, wordless, out of the terminal, into the parking garage, into Diane's car, cloth seats, faint scent of lavender air freshener and disapproval. She used to joke that her mother looked like a retired librarian but judged like an active priest. That day, Diane didn't say a word. The drive lasted 32 minutes. Silence for everyone. No music. No questions. Just the hum of tires and the tension of two women pretending to not think about everything that was already known. Melanie clutched the envelope like it might bite. Inside, she already guessed what she'd find. The photo, the bank doc, the message. But more than that, she was guessing how her mother got it. From Mark directly? Or from someone else? The lawyer? The friend's circle? Had Mark mailed it or handed it over face to face? At some point on the freeway, Diane finally spoke. He asked me not to reach out after this. That was all. No anger. No venom. Just the weary tone of a woman who knew this mess wasn't hers to clean. That tone cracked Melanie worse than any insult could have. When they pulled up to the house, Melanie's stomach finally twisted. Because the lights were off. No welcome light. No porch lamp. The curtains were drawn. And her suitcase was already there, sitting perfectly upright on the front step. Not thrown. Not dumped. Placed. Next to it an envelope. Handwritten. Not typed. Not cold. Worse. Mark's handwriting, precise, blocky, unmistakable. She sat on the bottom step to read it. Her mother stayed in the car. She unfolded the note. No salutation. Just this. I didn't yell. I didn't chase. You just drifted. So I let go. No signature. No demand for explanation. No room for redemption. The door handle rattled when she tried it. Locked. Deadbolt engaged. The code pad she used every day now blinked red with each attempt. She tried her key. Didn't work. Melanie stood there, holding the suitcase handle in one hand, the note in the other. The shame didn't come all at once. It never does. Creeps. Starts as heat in the chest, then slowly pulls your spine down with its weight. She turned to look at her mother, still parked, engine idling. Diane didn't get out. Just stared ahead, lips pressed tight, as if watching a scene she'd long predicted but never dared speak aloud. And in that moment, Melanie realized something chilling. This wasn't just Mark walking away. It was everyone. There would be no dramatic screaming match. No pleading over dinner. No rush therapy bookings or we can fix this post-it notes on the mirror. She had built her escape hatch, packed her lies, framed the trip as freedom. And the second she stepped through it, the bridge collapsed behind her. No fire, no noise, just absence. And one note, a goodbye disguised as a fact. The motel smelled like bleach and resignation. Melanie sat on the edge of the thin mattress, ankle crossed over knee like she was still trying to feel composed. Like this was a brief inconvenience and not the sudden new reality wrapping itself around her throat. She tried the house one more time that morning. Stood on the porch with puffy eyes, suitcase in hand, pretending the night had just been some bad play. But the locks hadn't changed back. The security keypad still blinked red. And the neighbor's dog barked at her like she didn't belong anymore. Because she didn't. So she booked the nearest cheap motel with a vacancy sign and a bed that looked clean. Paid with what was left on the emergency card she used for online shopping. And then, out of habit or desperation or both, she opened her banking app. Her thumb hovered over the fingerprint login for half a second longer than usual. Almost like she already knew. It loaded. Joint accounts. Closed. Credit line. Inactive. Card ending in 1172. Declined. Alert. Your account access has been updated. For assistance, contact the account holder. She wasn't the account holder. Never had been. She'd always prided herself on not needing to be. Told her friends Mark was old school when it came to finances. Liked to manage the money so she didn't have to. They thought it was sweet. She used to laugh and say, "It's one less password to remember." Now it was one more door slammed shut. Her hands trembled. She dropped the phone on the bedspread, Watched it bounce once before settling. Black screen staring back at her. That's when the text came in. Colin, guess the game's up. Nothing else. Not sorry. Not what now. Not even a damn emoji. Just that single, smug declaration. Like they were teammates who just lost a round of poker instead of co-conspirators in unraveling a marriage. She didn't reply. There was no play left. She walked to the window, pulled the plastic curtain back an inch and stared at the view. A cracked parking lot, a power line swaying, some guy smoking in front of a vending machine with a busted light. No beach, no ocean breeze, just fluorescent misery and second-hand disappointment. She stood there a long time, and then she remembered the second envelope. The one her mother had handed her right before driving away. No explanation, no expression. Just, Mark asked me to give you this. Said to wait. She peeled it open slowly. Inside just one thing. A single sheet printout. Bold header across the top. Colin Martin, C-mate profile. His face. That same grinning profile pic. Different shirt. Same tan. Same charm. Below it. Status. Active. Last online, 2 days ago. Tagline. Sun, sand, and no strings. She read it twice. Then a third time. And finally sat down, back against the wall. The paper curling slightly in her hands as if even it was recoiling from her touch. She thought of the nights they spent laughing in that hotel bed. Planning nothing because that was the point. No schedules, no kids, no responsibilities. Just freedom. Freedom, apparently, meant she was interchangeable. No strings. No future. No place to go. The man she had leveraged everything for, her marriage, her name, her access, had already pre-written his exit before she even boarded the plane. She stared at his profile again, eyes unfocused, brain looping static. Somewhere in the next room, a couple argued through the wall. Someone slammed a toilet lid. Car backfired. The world moved on. Melanie didn't. She folded the paper in half with numb fingers. Set it beside her on the stained nightstand, right next to her dead phone and unopened bottle of water. And she sat. No tears. No tantrum. Just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't offer space to think. Only enough to feel the full weight of what you've lost. The rental unit was quieter than the motel, but somehow lonelier. Too clean. Too temporary. Like it had been built solely for people whose lives had fallen apart in transit. It smelled like new paint and unfamiliar soap. A studio with 2 forks, 1 towel, and nothing on the walls. Melanie hadn't spoken to anyone in 3 days. Her mother stopped responding after that first night. Just sent a cold, "You'll figure something out," and nothing else. Colin was a ghost. His profile was still live, still active. But no texts, no calls, no apology. Not even an attempt to shift blame. Just static. She sat on the pull-out sofa, phone on silent beside her, staring at the blank TV screen like it might turn on by itself. Her suitcase, still packed, sat in the corner. She hadn't unpacked it. Couldn't bring herself to pretend this place was anything but a holding pen. That's when it happened. A familiar ping. Not a text. Not a call. A file drop notification. From an email she hadn't used since 2018. An old backup linked to her dormant tablet. She only caught it because the tablet lit up across the room. Screen glowing in the dark like a silent witness. Sender M. Carlson. Subject, you wanted clarity. There was no message. Just an attached video file titled 3B_entry_footage OV. Her thumb hovered over it. She could have deleted it. Could have let it sit there like a landmine in her inbox. But curiosity has a way of surviving even in humiliation. So she pressed play. The video opened with a grainy black and white frame, angled from above, clearly a security cam. The lobby of the Rivage Shoreline Hotel. Time code in the corner. Friday, 4:38 p.m. The exact day she sent the text. It's just a harmless getaway. Relax. And there they were. Melanie and Colin. Walking in like it was a honeymoon. He held the room key, she held his hand. They stopped briefly at the desk. She was laughing, eyes bright. Then they walked toward the elevator. Nothing scandalous. Just routine. But the footage felt surgical. Cold. Like it had been waiting quietly for its cue. Halfway through the clip, Mark's voice entered. Not angry. Not mocking. Just even. You asked for harmless. You gave me final. No background noise. No breath. Just that one line. The video ended. Then the screen went black. A single line of white text appeared. Please forward all future contact through legal. She sat frozen. Not because the footage showed anything she didn't already remember, but because it proved, beyond all illusion, that Mark had seen everything. He hadn't guessed. He hadn't wondered. He had known. Not through rumors. Not through yelling. Not through sleuthing the way she assumed a man like him would. He had just watched. Watched her lie in real time. Watched her laugh while he crafted her exit. Watched her betray him with all the grace of someone who thought she was too clever to ever get caught. She closed the tablet slowly, placed it on the floor like a live explosive. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. It was the collapse, the realization that it was done. Mark wasn't coming back. Not with rage. Not with questions. Not with a final confrontation to make sense of it all. He had given her the rarest, most painful form of closure. One line. One video. One severed connection. She had spent a year preparing to leave him, and he'd walked away first, without slamming the door, just locking it, forever.